The apology came precisely 273 years after the first human stepped off Earth and onto the dusted red plains of Ilion 4. No one expected it. Not from them. Not from the Ailari. The Ailari were the oldest known sentient species in the galaxy. Not just in age, but in how long they had been watching, judging, recording. Their ships didn't hum or blink or shimmer. They simply existed immovable as time, deliberate as ossified stone. For centuries, the Ailari had never interfered. They observed, they catalogued. And when the younger species asked for help, they offered silence wrapped in condescension. So when a transmission came from the Ailari High Seat, directed to a human station, everyone assumed it was another cold data request or a correction in some interstellar archive. But it wasn't. It was an apology, and it started with a video. A recording grainy, shaky, and too close to the action. The kind that smelled of desperation and laughter in the face of doom. The man in the video was Harrison Lorne. He was pinned beneath the mangled frame of a collapsed shuttle wing, coughing blood into the dirt and laughing so hard it made his broken ribs shift audibly. "Guess that's what I get for trusting a Martian mechanic with a hangover," he wheezed. The Ailari watched that clip for over an hour. On loop, in silence. Then they asked to meet him, but by that time Harrison was already recovering in orbit, his body a patchwork of surgical tape, titanium rods, and pure stubbornness. It had started 6 weeks before the apology. Harrison stepped off the transport ship onto the crusted surface of Makar 3, his boots crunching on salt like sand. The air was breathable barely. His helmet hissed as it retracted. "Lorne, you're late," said a voice behind him. He turned to see Commander Drell, one of the Heshari. Tall, scaled, and always irritated. Drell's species had evolved on a gas giant's moon and seemed to think existing anywhere else was a personal affront. "Yeah, well," Harrison said, hoisting his duffel over one shoulder. "Shuttle got hit by a solar flare, nav system fried. Had to land manually." Drell blinked slowly. "And you laughed." "What, you laughed? The flight logs show your cockpit feed. You were spinning toward the surface, the stabilizers offline, and you laughed." Harrison shrugged. It was that or scream. Drell walked off without replying, his thick tail leaving a dragging line in the dust. Harrison followed. The outpost was a series of modular domes, half buried in the sand to avoid radiation spikes. Inside, the temperature was a comfortable 22 degrees. The air smelled like recycled sweat and burnt coffee. He spent the next 2 days repairing a collapsed sensor array. Makar 3 was a dead world but rich in metal deposits, and the mining corporations wanted every square meter mapped. On the 3rd day, the storm hit. It wasn't supposed to. The forecast showed clear skies for a week. Harrison was outside when the first wave hit. The wind came like a wall, carrying sand sharp enough to flay skin. He grabbed the comm. "Base, this is Lorne. We've got a Category 5 coming in from the North Ridge. Forecast was wrong." "Repeat, it was wrong. I need evac." "Static." He tried again. Nothing. He turned just as the sky turned black. The shuttle was only 20 meters away, half buried in a maintenance trench. He ran. The wind caught him mid-sprint and threw him sideways into the trench wall. Pain bloomed in his right arm. He didn't stop. Climbing down into the trench, he reached the shuttle, forced the hatch open, and threw himself inside. The storm lasted 23 hours. When it passed, half the dome was gone. The shuttle had collapsed under the weight of a dislodged support beam. Harrison had been trapped inside for 9 hours. Ribs cracked, arm dislocated, left leg broken. Air slowly leaking. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd it felt like the universe was trying too hard. He recorded a message just in case. "If anyone finds this, tell Drell I want my socks back. The good ones. And tell Command I said next time, maybe check the weather twice." When the rescue team finally found him, he was barely conscious, blood pooled under him, but still breathing. 2 weeks later, Harrison lay in a medbay aboard the orbital station over Makar 3. His leg was in traction, ribs wrapped tight, arm in a sling. The door hissed open, a creature stepped in. Not Drell. Not Ailari, not anything he recognized, tall, impossibly tall, with skin like fog and eyes that didn't reflect light. It moved like water and silence had a child. "Harrison Lorne," it said, "unless my brain's leaking out my ears, yeah, I am Selin of the Ailari." He blinked. "You're real." "Yes, and you're here for me?" "Yes." He tried to sit up and winced. "Well, now I know I hit my head." Selin stepped forward, tilting its head. "You are injured. Nice of you to notice. You laughed while dying." Harrison frowned. "I wasn't dying. You were." He didn't respond. Selin sat or folded, it was hard to tell. "We have watched your species for 5,000 years, catalogued every war, every mistake, every failure. We believed your kind reckless, primitive, incapable of understanding the weight of existence." "Well," Harrison said, "you're not wrong, you laughed." "Yeah, I do that." "Why? Because if I didn't," he said quietly, "I'd give up." Selin studied him, not with eyes, with presence. "We have never apologized," Selin said. Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Okay. But we made a mistake. We believed endurance came from knowledge. That strength was born from understanding, but you're kind. You survive because you find meaning in absurdity. You endure because you accept the void and still choose to smile." Harrison looked down at his bandaged arm. "That's poetic, but I'm not a philosopher." "No," Selin said. "You are what you are, and that is enough." It stood. "We came to apologize for dismissing you. For watching your fall and never offering a hand. You do not need our help, but you deserved our respect long before now." Harrison stared at the alien. "I still want my socks back," he said. Selin paused, then impossibly smiled or gave the impression of one. "We will see to it." And then it left. The apology was transmitted across the galactic network, not in words but in emotion. A resonance of regret, humility, and finally recognition. The Ailari didn't speak often, but when they did, the galaxy listened. And this time they said, "We were wrong about humanity." The message included the clip of Harrison laughing beneath the shuttle wing. It went viral. Some tried to make it a joke. Others called it propaganda, but most just watched and understood. Because sometimes, the strongest thing a species can do is laugh when the universe tries to break them, and then get back up anyway. The first time Harrison was allowed out of the medbay, he walked with a limp and a portable bone regenerator strapped to his thigh. The thing whirred faintly with each step, buzzing like an overworked fan and drawing curious glances from passing technicians. Most of them weren't human. The orbital station above Makar 3 had doubled in population since the apology broadcast. Delegates from over 30 species had arrived in the past week. Some came to witness the alleged turning point of galactic diplomacy. Others came to study what made humans worth an apology from the Ailari, a species whose last formal statement had predated fire on Earth. Harrison, meanwhile, just wanted to get to the hydroponics deck. He hadn't smelled real greenery in weeks. A door hissed open and he stepped into the garden dome. Moist air hit him like warm fog. Vines drooped from the ceiling. Tall stalks of alien flora stood in silent rows under filtered lighting. Somewhere in the corner, a pump gurgled softly. "Do not touch the red-leaved specimens. They emit a neurotoxin if startled." The voice came from behind a lattice of woven stalks. Then the owner appeared, a being shaped like a tapering column of chitin and jointed limbs. Its head was a cluster of eyes, each blinking at a different rhythm. "Good to know," Harrison said, shifting his weight. "I was planning to shake hands with one." "You are Harrison Lorne," the creature said. "I was hoping to be just a guy looking for some fresh air. My species does not exhale. Air is irrelevant to us. Good talk. I am Feshik. I observe responses to environmental stimuli in biologically inefficient species." Harrison frowned. "That's your job." "It is my calling." Feshik extended a limb toward him, not quite a handshake, more like a polite offering of a very sharp stick. Harrison nodded at it and sat on a nearby bench made of bio-resin. "I have reviewed the footage," Feshik continued. Your physical state during the collapse was incompatible with survival. Yet here I am. Indeed, this is what I wish to understand. You ever been in a situation where everything goes wrong at once and you can't fix any of it, so you just laugh? My species disassembles its own limbs when overwhelmed. Well, humans don't usually do that. Laughter's cheaper and less messy. Feshik tilted its head. What is the evolutionary utility? None, probably, but it keeps your brain from imploding. A long pause followed. Then, without warning, Feshik dropped into a squat. I will attempt it. Harrison blinked. Attempt what? Laughter. Feshik's thorax shuddered. A high-pitched wheeze escaped its vents, followed by a sound like wet rubber being stretched over a flute. A passing engineer dropped his datapad. Okay, maybe wait until you're not around flammable plants. I do not believe it was effective. You'll get there. 2 hours later, Harrison returned to his quarters. His leg ached and the regenerator was beginning to pulse in warning. He collapsed into the low-gravity bunk and let the silence settle, then the lights dimmed and a tone pinged from the wall console. Visitor request, the system chirped. Who? Unregistered, non-threatening. Biometric ID, not in database. That's comforting. Shall I deny entry? He sat up. No, let's see what happens. The door opened. The being that entered was unlike anything he'd seen before. It floated, not through tech, but through biology gliding on translucent membranes that flexed like sails in invisible wind. Its face, if there was one, was a shifting interplay of color and pattern. I am. Tellin, it said, though the voice echoed as if spoken through water. Another fan, observer, interpreter, collector of near-deaths, sounds cheerful. You changed the trajectory of species assessment, Harrison Lorne. He rubbed the side of his face. I didn't do anything special, just didn't die. That is precisely the point. Tellin hovered closer. The Ailari's apology has destabilized multiple diplomatic assumptions. Your reaction to mortality has caused review of over 600 cultural matrices. I think I need a lawyer. You need exposure. Wait, are you trying to make me famous? Fame is irrelevant. Symbolism is not. Harrison stood, testing his weight. Look, I appreciate the attention, but I'm not a symbol. I'm just a guy who had a bad day and didn't let it ruin my sense of irony. That is why you are a symbol. He turned away. I didn't ask for this. No one ever asks to become a myth. The next morning, he was summoned to a summit room. It was an amphitheater of curved glass and alloy, suspended on a spire above the station's core. Gravity was lighter here, just enough to make movements feel unanchored. Around him, representatives from at least 20 species occupied floating platforms, some in suits, some in tanks, one in a cube of humming plasma. Harrison stood at a single podium in the center. No notes, no translator, just him and a growing sense of nausea. A voice rang out from above, translated through layered frequencies. Harrison Lorne, you have been requested to clarify your species' coping response to imminent death. He blinked. Sorry, what? In the footage, you displayed behavior inconsistent with all standard death approach protocols. Please explain. You want me to explain why I laughed? Affirmative. He scratched his jaw. I wasn't laughing at death. I was laughing at the absurdity of everything going wrong at once. The shuttle, the storm, the beam crushing me. It was all so ridiculous it felt like a cosmic prank. More silence. And I guess, he added, if the universe is gonna kill me, I'd rather go out laughing than begging. A low hum passed through the chamber. Not disapproval, something closer to confusion. A jellyfish like being pulsed its tendrils. This response is not economically viable. It does not increase survival odds. It increases the odds that if I do survive, I'm not a wreck afterward. A creature shaped like a spiraled stone rotated slowly. Then humor is a form of psychological armor. Yeah, improvised armor, not always reliable but better than nothing. A new voice joined the fray, calm, deliberate. Then your kind treats futility with spectacle, the Ailari. Selin. Harrison looked up at the platform where Selin's form hovered, still indistinct, still impossible to focus on fully. No, We treat futility like a dare, Harrison said. Selin floated downward, settling across from him. The other species here seek to understand your behavior so they may predict it. But unpredictability is your trait. It cannot be modeled. Maybe it's not supposed to be, Selin's presence pulsed. Then humanity may be the first true chaos variable in the galactic equation. Harrison folded his arms. We prefer wild card, but sure. That afternoon, a new directive was distributed across the diplomatic network. It advised all member species to update their psychological risk assessments for humans, not because of aggression, not because of weaponry, but because humans had a statistically unquantifiable response to existential threat. They called it the Lorne factor. And within 24 hours, 2 trade alliances, 3 military coalitions, and 1 scientific council had requested human liaisons, not for protection, for inspiration. 3 days after the summit, Harrison Lorne was summoned again, not to speak, not to be studied, but to demonstrate. Demonstrate what exactly? He asked, tightening the strap on his walking brace. The swelling in his leg had finally gone down, and the limp had shrunk from a shuffle to a manageable stagger. You, answered Dr. Miva, a Sithari neurologist with a carapace like braided copper wires and a habit of staring too long without blinking. You will undergo a controlled stress engagement while your biological and cognitive responses are recorded. Yeah, I don't love the sound of that. You've already signed the consent form. You are still under pain medication, but the signature is legally binding on this station. He blinked. Of course it is. Follow me. They moved through the medical wing's lower levels, where the lighting dimmed to a soft amber and the walls curved in irregular organic patterns. The station had been partially retrofitted for the diversity of its new occupants, many of whom found sharp corners and bright lights psychologically offensive. The chamber they entered had a central platform ringed by transparent shielding. Above it, a suspended disc held dozens of sensors, each pointing inward like the petals of a frozen sun. 3 beings stood at consoles. Miva, a gelatinous life form named Ulan who communicated entirely through scent pulses, and a robotic observer from the mechanical synclade of Vexari Null, who introduced itself as Node 441 of None. Harrison stepped onto the platform. The shielding rose around him with a soft hum. Just a heads up, he said. If this gets weird, I reserve the right to scream ironically. That is encouraged, Miva replied. A low tone signaled the start. The lights dimmed further. A projection shimmered into the air, a simulation but richly detailed. He was suddenly standing on the cracked hull of an orbital freighter, its structure groaning under stress. Alarms blared, fire pulsed from ruptured conduits. There was no instruction, just environment. He moved forward, careful not to put weight on his recovering leg. The simulation responded with a tremor. The floor panels shifted and buckled. A path appeared, narrow and unstable, leading to a sealed door. He crouched, examined the hinges. A manual release. As he worked the lock, a burst of static echoed above him. Subject's heart rate rising, cortisol levels increasing. No visible distress behavior, Node 441 observed. Miva adjusted a dial. The fire intensified. Behind him, a simulated crew member appeared, crushed beneath debris, wheezing. Help, please. It was a recording, of course, but the voice was human. A child's voice. Harrison froze. Subject is hesitating, Miva noted. He took a breath. Swallowed, then he spoke. Listen, kid, I know you're scared, but I need you to pretend that nothing hurts. Can you do that? The voice whimpered, then stilled. He turned, found a brace rod among the debris and wedged it under the beam, leveraged his weight. The child avatar flickered and vanished. The scenario was procedural, not responsive. He moved to the door again, jammed the release open. The chamber beyond exploded with simulated decompression. He was blown backward, rolled, hit the wall. The projection ended. The platform lights returned. Test complete, Miva said. Glad I could provide existential theater, Harrison muttered, wiping his forehead. Your response patterns are statistically inconsistent with all comparative models, Miva said. You neither ignored the distress call nor attempted full rescue, but instead used language to mitigate your own emotional response. I told a dying kid to pretend they were fine. That's not mitigation. That's survival guilt playing dress up. You were aware it was a simulation. Didn't matter. Ulan released a scent burst that translated through the console as, "Emotional resilience appears chemically irrational," Node 441 chimed in. Human behavior suggests recursive risk tolerance is tied to semantic detachment. That's a fancy way of saying we lie to ourselves just enough to keep moving, Harrison said, stepping off the platform with a wince. Miva tapped a sequence into her tablet. You will require a glucose nutrient pack and 2 hours of rest. Your musculoskeletal strain is above threshold. No arguments here. He limped out of the chamber. By late evening, he sat alone in the auxiliary mess hall, a pouch of nutrient gel in one hand and a diagnostic wrap cooling his knee. The station outside the viewport glowed in streaks of soft blue and gold, the planet below swirling with dust storms. A low vibration passed through the floor. Someone else entered. He didn't look up until he heard the tendrils brush the floor. Selin. The Ailari moved without footsteps, each shift of its body silent and fluid. It approached the table without speaking. When it finally sat, if the term applied, it did so without ceremony. There was no directive to subject you to that trial, Selin said. I figured. Miva's the type to take initiative. You did not object. You think I haven't been through worse with a hangover? Selin's form rippled. We still do not comprehend the mechanism by which your kind transforms inevitability into amusement. Because it's not a mechanism, it's instinct. The same way some animals freeze when threatened, we double down on absurdity. Is that how you continued to function during your entrapment? No, that was painkillers and spite. Selin regarded him, though he could never quite tell how. You cannot be replicated. Was someone trying? There was a proposal to train diplomatic avatars using your behavioral patterns. The results were unstable. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Half of what I do doesn't make sense to me either. Selin remained still for a long moment. The apology we issued was not merely symbolic. It altered our internal hierarchy. Some of us were demoted for having misjudged your species. Others, elevated. Let me guess, you got a promotion. I received authorization to speak without consensus. Harrison raised an eyebrow. That's either a compliment or a threat. Selin's form shifted faintly. It is both. I am now permitted to express individual opinion. That is unprecedented. Glad I could shake things up. You should know. There are factions within the Ailari who believe your kind is too volatile to be engaged further, that your unpredictability is a threat. We probably are. But we're the kind of threat that doesn't fire first. Selin tilted slightly. I disagreed with them, I still do. Because of the laughing. No, because of the choice behind it. They sat in silence for a while, the lights dimmed slightly as the station shifted into rest cycle. Harrison sipped from a hydration bulb, his muscles aching in dull pulses. Do you wish to return to your world? Selin asked. I don't think I'd fit anymore. You have become something else. I didn't mean to. That is irrelevant. Selin stood, or rose, rather. The galaxy will remember the apology, but it will not understand it, not fully. I'm used to not being understood. Then you are the right one. For what, to be the first? Harrison looked up. First what? The first human to speak for your kind without translation, without filter. To say in your own way what survival feels like, he leaned back. I already did that. Not yet, but you will. Selin turned, then paused. One final question, it said. When you were trapped beneath the shuttle and you laughed, was it because you had accepted death? No, Harrison replied. It was because I hadn't. Selin left without another word. The next morning, Miva's team released their final report. The Ailari appended it to their central record. For the first time in their history, the glossary included a new entry not borrowed from any known language. It read, Lorne response. The deliberate use of humor or irony in the presence of imminent mortality, often accompanied by irrational perseverance. Considered unquantifiable, potentially contagious. Highly disorienting to structured species. The file closed with a single annotation written in Sellen's newly authorized voice. We once believed the void would swallow them. Instead, they built campfires in it. And that was the end of the matter. No further tests were scheduled. No new apologies issued, but across the galaxy, a quiet directive spread. If you encounter a human in crisis, do not underestimate them, especially if they start laughing.